When people say they want to be a millionaire, I always smile and ask, by when? And more importantly, what's your plan for today? See, the dream is exciting. Big numbers feel good when we say them out loud. $1 million, $10 million, financial freedom. But the secret is not in the size of the goal. It's in the size of your steps. You don't climb a mountain in one giant leap. You do it one steady step at a time. That's how wealth is built. Not in a flash, but in a rhythm. If your goal is to have $1 million in 10 years, it sounds massive. It can even feel overwhelming. But break it down. That's $100,000 a year. Still big? Fine. That's about $8,000. $300 a month. Let's go further. Around $275 a day. Now it's starting to look like something you can work with. Because once the number becomes clear, the actions can become daily. That's when you stop dreaming and start building. So, you ask yourself, what can I do today to create $275 worth of value? Maybe not all at once, but how do I build toward it? Can I start a service? Create a product? Add a new skill that increases my income? Can I reduce my expenses by $50 and invest the difference? Can I skip a luxury and redirect that money toward my future? It's not just about the money. It's about building the mindset of progress. Big goals are intimidating because they live in the future. Daily actions, though they live in your calendar. And that's where results are born. I remember starting with just a few dollars, but I had a vision and I had a calculator. I mapped out what I needed to earn, save, and learn. And every day, I just tried to get a little closer, a little better. Over time, that compounded into freedom. So break it down. Dream in years, but act in days. That's how a fortune is built, one focused day at a time. Dreams are a wonderful place to start, but they're a terrible place to stop. You see, everyone has dreams. Drive down any street and you'll find people dreaming of better things, more money, more time, more freedom. But the ones who get it, the ones who live it, don't just dream, they decide. They set standards, and they live by them like laws. Let me give it to you straight. A dream says, I'd like to save money. A standard says, I save 20% of every dollar I earn, no matter what. A dream says, I want to be wealthy someday. A standard says, I invest every month without fail. That's the difference between living on hope and living on a system, between drifting and driving. When I was young, I had all kinds of dreams, but very few standards. I'd say, one day I'll be rich, but one day never came because my habits didn't match my hopes. Then I learned to raise my standards. I said, I'll read 30 minutes every day. I'll save before I spend. I'll track every dollar. And once I made those non-negotiable, the results started to follow. See, your bank account doesn't grow because you dreamed about it. It grows because you did something about it consistently. You need habits so strong they operate without emotion. Whether it's a good day or a bad one, whether you feel like it or not, you save, you study, you stay disciplined. I often say, don't negotiate with your standards. Don't wait for motivation. Just do what must be done. The wealthy don't build freedom on feelings. They build it on principles. Think of a thermostat. Once you set it, it keeps the room at that level. Your financial thermostat should be no different. Set it higher, then live like you mean it. Dreams give you direction, but standards, that's what delivers the destination. You know, we live in a world that celebrates the fast and the flashy. People want results overnight, riches in a month, and success with a shortcut. But here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. Real wealth isn't loud. It's silent. It doesn't come in fireworks. It comes in quiet, daily disciplines that compound when no one's watching. Compounding is one of the most powerful forces I've ever seen. And it works whether you understand it or not. But once you do understand it, you can use it for everything. Money, sure, but also knowledge, reputation, health, relationships. See, the wealthy aren't always the smartest. They're the most consistent. They understand that $10 saved today is not just $10, it's the seed of a fortune if you give it time to grow. I used to think you had to make it big early or you'd never make it. But that's not true. I learned that small things done daily are greater than big things done occasionally. A little invested every month. A few pages read every night. A good deed done without applause. These things don't shout, but they stack. Let me tell you, I've seen it in my own life. When I started putting a portion of every paycheck aside, it didn't seem like much, but I stayed with it. I watched it grow, slowly, quietly, until one day it wasn't small anymore. The magic isn't in the amount, it's in the momentum. The problem is most folks give up before the magic shows up. They plant seeds and dig them up every other week, wondering why nothing's growing. You've got to trust the invisible progress, the slow climb, the daily deposit. So if you want wealth, learn the silent skill. Honor time, respect patience, master consistency, because wealth whispers before it ever speaks. When I was broke, I thought money would solve all my problems. I believed that once I had enough, I'd become more disciplined, more generous, more wise. But let me tell you what life taught me. Money doesn't change who you are. It magnifies who you already are. If you're careless with $100, you'll be reckless with 100,000. If you can't manage a little, you won't manage a lot. That's not judgment, that's mathematics. So I learned this truth early on. Don't wait for wealth to build the habits of the wealthy. Start when it's hard. Start when it's small. Start when nobody's clapping. Because the habits you form in lack are the ones that sustain you in abundance. I remember my early years, pockets empty, wallet thin, but I made it a rule. No matter what I earned, I'd save a portion, even if it was just $1. I treated every dollar like it mattered, because it did, not just for my account, but for my character. I made investing a priority before I had anything to invest. I read about money before I had much to manage. I tracked my spending before there was much to track. And let me tell you, it felt silly at times. But those little disciplines, they were seeds. Quiet, steady seeds that turned into trees. And later, when the money did come, when opportunities showed up, I was ready because I wasn't learning under pressure. I was prepared by practice. The tragedy is most people wait for a breakthrough before they begin. But life doesn't work that way. The habits must come first. They're the foundation. Build them early, protect them fiercely, and repeat them daily. Because wealth doesn't start in your bank account, it starts in your behavior. I used to think that wealth was about how much you could enjoy. The car, the clothes, the night out. And I'll admit, when I first started making a little money, I wanted to taste all of it. But then I learned something that changed the direction of my life. Pleasure isn't the goal, Freedom Island. And the sooner you learn to delay a little comfort, the sooner you'll get to the real prize. See, broke people spend for comfort. They want the feeling now. They trade long-term gain for short-term satisfaction. But wealthy people, those who've really mastered the game, they do something very different. They buy freedom. They take the same dollar that someone else would use for entertainment, and they turn it into investment. They trade the fleeting for the future. I remember walking past a store one day, saw a new suit I wanted. Sharp, clean, expensive. And I had the money, but I didn't buy it. I took that money and put it into a little mutual fund I'd been feeding each month. That fund didn't impress anybody. No one clapped when I made that decision. But 5 years later, that little habit helped fund my first investment property. The suit would have faded. The property kept growing. It's not that you can't enjoy life, it's that you learn the timing of pleasure. The trick is to flip the reward. Make freedom the thing you chase, not the treat you delay. Make financial independence your new luxury. Let your discipline be your indulgence. That takes a shift in thinking, I know. It means you sometimes say no when your friends say yes. It means you delay the dinner out, the upgrade, the impulse. But let me tell you, it's worth it. because freedom is the highest pleasure you can buy. I used to trade time for money, just like everyone else. You work an hour, you get paid, you show up, do your job, go home, and you get your wage. And listen, there's nothing wrong with wages. Wages are honorable. But I soon learned something that changed everything. Wages make a living, equity builds a fortune. You see, when you work just for money, the moment you stop, the income stops. If you don't clock in, you don't get paid. It's a hamster wheel. But when you start thinking in terms of ownership, when you own a piece of the thing you're building, you move from the survival track to the wealth track. Equity is the secret ingredient. It's invisible at first, but one day it pays you whether you show up or not. I had a mentor early on who asked me a simple question. Are you getting a piece of the pie, or are you just baking it? That hit me hard. I was helping someone else build their dream, but I wasn't earning anything beyond my wage. So I started small. I got involved in a side business. I didn't know much, but I owned a little piece. And that little piece started to grow. It didn't pay me much at first, but unlike wages, it had potential. If you're working today, ask yourself, is there a path to equity here? If not, can I create one? Can I start something small on the side where I own it, where the value I build belongs to me? Because when you own it, you care differently. You show up differently. You build it like your future depends on it, because it does. So don't just work for money. Work for something that can multiply. Work for something that can grow while you sleep. Wages are for now. Equity is forever. When I was broke, I only focused on one thing, how much I was getting paid. I'd wait for payday, spend it down to the last dollar, then repeat the cycle. And I'll tell you, nothing changes until you change what you measure. Most people know what they earn, but they don't know what they're worth. That's why they stay broke. Wealthy people don't just look at income, they look at the whole picture. They ask, what do I own? What do I owe? What's growing and what's declining? That's what we call net worth. And if you don't track it, you'll never grow it. The first time I tracked my net worth, it was painful. I took a piece of paper, wrote down everything I had savings, investments, a few small assets. Then I wrote down what I owed credit cards, a car loan, some bills. And when I subtracted the two, I realized I wasn't worth much. But that paper became my scoreboard. And just like any game, when you start keeping score, you start playing differently. Month after month, I tracked it. I didn't wait for the numbers to impress me. I tracked it when it was ugly, and I tracked it when it started to grow. Because what gets measured gets improved. I'd make a sale, and instead of just spending the commission, I'd ask, how does this affect my net worth? I'd look at a new expense, and instead of asking if I could afford the payment, I'd ask, is this increasing my value or decreasing it? This shift in thinking made all the difference. I stopped chasing paychecks and started building a financial life. I started focusing less on how much I was making and more on how much I was keeping and growing. So every month, take out a sheet of paper or a spreadsheet and look at the big picture. Make it a habit, because the goal isn't just to make more, it's to become worth more. I used to think in dollars and cents. That's how most people think. They look at a $5 coffee and say, it's just $5. Or a $100 dinner and say, I had a good time, it was worth it. But let me tell you something that changed the way I looked at money forever. I started thinking in percentages, not just prices. That $5 habit daily wasn't costing me $5. It was quietly robbing me of thousands over the years. See, wealth is often lost in small daily decisions that feel harmless in the moment but become devastating when compounded. Let's say you earn $50,000 a year. A $5 daily coffee is 1% of your monthly income gone every morning. Now multiply that by 20 work days a month, and now it's 4% of your monthly income. Add in a few takeout meals, some impulse buys, subscriptions you don't use, and suddenly 20 to 30% of your income is slipping through your fingers and you're wondering why you can't save or invest. It's not the big expenses that crush you, it's the silent ones you don't track. When I made the shift to percentages, my financial decisions changed. I didn't ask, can I afford it? I asked, what percent of my future is this costing me? That $100 dinner wasn't just a nice meal, it was 0.2% of my annual income. Was it worth giving that up just to impress someone or satisfy a craving? Sometimes, yes. But most of the time, no. Because I started valuing freedom more than flavor. And this is how the wealthy think. They don't nickel and dime every transaction they measure cost against return. They train their mind to see the compounding impact of each decision. Thinking this way doesn't make you stingy, it makes you wise. It protects you from making 1,000 small financial leaks that eventually sink the ship. So next time you reach into your wallet, don't just look at the number, look at the percentage. Because every percent you save is a percent closer to financial independence.